Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to week 2 of our leadership series. Thank you, Mike. I'll take it. Stick it right up here. And thank you, Terry. You guys are a blessing. So, week 2, and this week is our second week, and we're going to be diving into part 2 of communication. And this is part of our 4-week leadership series, and if you are new today, you got to know from the get-go that you're a leader. If you got a brain, you're a leader. Because you had to lead yourself here to this moment. And leading yourself is sometimes the hardest thing to do. And, we could talk about eating habits and personal health and diet plans, all self-leadership, and not easy to do, not easy to necessarily lose weight, or some people want to gain weight. But that's just a small example. If you've got a brain, you're a leader. And if you're in a relationship, you're probably leading somebody, or could be, or should be. And if you're a disciple of Jesus, the Great Commission says, make disciples of all nations, teaching them to obey all I've commanded you. And a disciple is a learner, and if someone's learning, then they're following, and they're following, then there's leadership involved. So if you're to make disciples, you're to make followers of Jesus, but how are they going to? He ain't here. He's here through the Holy Spirit. He's here through his word, but they're following Jesus through you. Again, leadership. So this is a big deal. It's a big deal for each person in this room, for all of us, and it's a big deal for us as disciples of Jesus. This is something that we've got to grow in and develop. So the first 2 weeks, we're talking about communication and diving into communication, and particularly from one angle, and that is an angle that people frequently don't associate with leadership, and that is listening and asking good questions. Usually when we talk about communication and leadership, it's what I'm doing, public speaking right now. And there's studies that show there is an over association or connection in people's minds between the ability to do public speaking and leadership. And just because someone's good at public speaking doesn't mean they're good at leading somebody or somebody's somewhere that's going to be beneficial to them. There's a big overlap between the two skills, but they're not the same thing. And I shared this story last week, but I'm going to share it again this week of how I got turned on to this topic. And this first 2 weeks we're doing on communication. This is week 2. We're going to do some review right now. But I got turned on to this as a young pastor. I was preaching, prophesying, I was preaching every week, and even though I was hearing the word of the Lord for our congregation and prophesying over people and getting accurate words of knowledge for healing, all at 25, 26, my marriage was suffering, and I thought that my ability to hear from the Lord and declare the word of the Lord and exhort, speak and talk was going to be the thing that would really help my wife follow me, because I'm always hearing and telling her what I hear the Lord saying. And look at that knowing laughter. So we reached this, I alluded to this last time, but I'll tell you a specific story. We reached this critical juncture in our marriage, and I don't remember the exact day or year, but it was probably 2 or 3 years in, and I'd been ministering. And you got to remember, it's like people are blessed. The Lord and his grace, despite my idiocy, was causing my ministry to bear fruit, and people's lives were transformed by the Spirit, but not my marriage. So we're sitting in the car, and I'm trying to, once again, share things that the Lord's put on my heart. I was probably going to minister it that night. We're sitting in the car, got to this church parking lot, and I could feel that my wife and I are having a disconnect. Kate and I are having a disconnect, and she's totally turned off and mad at me, and hurt too. I can't put that together. I'm like, I'm trying to engage you, and I'm of the mindset, I'm going to talk until you jump in. That's how my mom is, right? We're all informed by our background. And she shared with me, finally, and I was like, what's going on? She shared with me, she said, you're always saying what you sense God's saying, but there's no room for me to share that too. Right. And I wasn't trying to run her over, but I was. And I had to, it opened my eyes to realize I had to go on a journey of learning how to listen well and ask good questions and draw her out, because at that point I wasn't a leader, I was a hiker. I was going somewhere by myself and telling her about it.
That's true. Right.
Are you a leader tonight, or are you a hiker? I want to show you how you can bridge that gap and go from being more of a hiker to more of a leader by connecting with people through communication. And not just what we stereotypically think of communication in leadership, but real communication in conversation. I realized the smallest unit of connection in a relationship is a conversation. It's the smallest individual unit that makes up a connection, that makes up a relationship. So if you could level up your conversations, you can level up your relationships. And if you can level up your relationships, you can level up your leadership. So we can go to some of these review slides really quickly. We're going to run through these review slides tonight. Then I've got an interview with Pastor Mark. I'm going to ask him a few questions from his own life. Then we're going to dive into a few more training things. Then I'm going to have a live demo. Then you're going to practice. Then, time permitting, more information. Another demo, more practice. So we got a big night. I'm not sure there's going to be time for everything. It's going to be fast-paced. The slides from last week, thank you, Hank. The slides that we went through last week are on the desk out here for people who like paper handouts. They've also been emailed to everyone through Realm. Thank you, Emily O'Reilly. So, and at this point, before I keep going, I'd like to ask Mercy to hand out our notes for tonight. I have note handouts for you. Just a few things to think about. Most of them are just questions for you to answer. You can write on this. There's also going to be other activations and things to write tonight that you might want to use the back of this for. So get this little half sheet, and that will be great. And while you're looking at that and that's going around, let's review. So, you remember the verbal villains? Yeah, so verbal villains, I'm going to run through them. I want to hear from two people who were here last week about, I want to hear what kind of revelation or new discovery did you have from learning what not to do or what verbal villains there were, and how did that impact your life this past week as you went to have relationships? So, but before I do, I'll run these again. So these are 6 personalities that many of us frequently embody or do unwittingly that kill our connections with people. And I'm just going to run through the definition of each one to refresh your memory or to add new things, and then I'm going to get my 2 volunteers. So the first personality is the robber. And this is the person that listens to you long enough to have a sense of what you're talking about, and then they interrupt you and add to your thought and finish your sentence. I'm guilty of this all day long. I'm thinking very fast. I'm very verbally, that's my thing. And I like jumping in because I think interrupting is adding, and it's not. That was a big problem right here, was interrupting was not adding, it was shutting her down. So the robber does that. The next one is the historian. They tell long stories with way too many details, and their victims feel trapped.
Yeah.
The interrogator, they engage in conversation under the guise of good listener, question asker, but they're driving at an agenda. They're driving the questions and they're listening to take you to a destination of their desire that you have no idea where it's going, and it feels kind of uncertain, and you're not sure you want to go there with them, but you're under the spotlight. And you're thinking, is Olivia Benson going to come into this conversation? Like, is this Law and Order? What is going on here, and what are you getting at? So the interrogator is another person. The labeler, this is a person that they've got you labeled, and every interaction you've had with them at every family Thanksgiving for the past 30 years, you're never going to stop being their fill-in-the-blank person to them. Right. Their little Johnny. Their, irresponsible screw-up so-and-so, even though you're not that person anymore. The labeler. The general, they're only in the conversation as long as they're in charge and they're the center of attention. As soon as they're a spectator in the conversation or they're just the listener, they're automatically disinterested, they're disengaged, and the conversation frequently ends. That's the general. And then the quick change artist, anytime the conversation turns into something that's painful for them or they don't really want to talk about that, they are masters at changing what's happening in the conversation. Changing, all of a sudden you're talking about something else and you don't know how you got there. That's the quick change artist. So we all have some of these that we absolutely hate, and then we all have some of these that we absolutely do. And just becoming aware of that helps us to just laugh at, own it, laugh about it, and stop doing it. And just right there, you automatically start to level up in your ability to connect. 2 volunteers that you got this last week and it helped you in some way. We want to hear about it. Raise your hand and I'll call on you. I thought, Sadi, did you raise your hand for that, or was it something else? Something else. Okay, I'm still looking for 2 volunteers that this hit you and you have a takeaway or something to share with everybody this week about verbal villains and conversation killers. Raise your hand. I'm okay. Love to hear from you. Maybe we'll do a survey. Raise your hand if seeing this tonight or last week, you can automatically identify one of these you absolutely hate right away. Yeah. No, okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you can automatically identify one that you do quite frequently. Okay. So that's most of us. Yeah. So good. So now you've got something that you can right away stop. And so last week we focused on what not to do. And you got that. And I'd encourage you to just make this a part of your conversation. Can we go to the next slide? This is Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. I want to go over it again because it's profoundly helpful when we think about leadership. Leadership is influence. It's doing things that people want to follow you, right? And if people are following you and learning from you and taking their cues from you, you're leading them on some level. The first level of leadership is position. People follow you because they have to. My kids follow me because I'm their dad. They have to, legally. Right? If you have a job and someone is your subordinate, they have to listen to you. That's positional leadership. People follow you because they have to, not because they want to, not because they respect you, but just because that's how it works. If you have a dog, they follow you because they have to. Maybe they don't, but you should work on that. So position, people follow you just because of that's where you are in life. The second one is permission. So position, permission, people follow you because they want to. And this is about the know, like, and trust factor. People want to follow you, they're bought in, they like you. And they want to do what you're saying and go where you're going, and that's level 2. And it's about relationship and connecting. So people on level 1 who are just level 1 leaders, they're thinking about this is who I am, and people should follow me. They're about directing. And then they move to connecting. They realize, I got to get them to be bought in, or else I'm still just a hiker. I might know where I want to go. I might have a badge on my shirt, but it doesn't mean anyone's going to go on the hike with me. So connecting is level 2, relationships, building relationships, getting people to have a relationship with you. And then level 3 is production. People want to follow you because of the results that you get and what you've done for the organization or the group you're part of. They realize you know how to win, you know how to get things done, you're successful at the doing, and your team does more than others, so they want to work with you. And then level 4 is about people development. At this level, you helped people for themselves. You helped them develop. You helped them personally grow. You made a difference personally in their life. Not just about the work. They don't just like you, but you actually made a difference in their personal life. Then they're really bought in and loyal to you. And then level 5 is you've done all 4 levels for so long, so well, that your reputation precedes you, and people who don't even know you're that kind of person, and they want to follow you because of what they've heard about you. And this is called the pinnacle, or we call it prestige or respect. The issue is that you don't graduate from any of the levels, you build upon. So if you are a level 4 leader making a difference in people's lives, but you let off the gas at level 2, and the key relationships in your life and your team deteriorate, you go right back down to level 1, and you have to start rebuilding relationships all over again. This is a frequent mistake people make. They start well, but finishing well is difficult because it's about maintaining and growing those relationships and those connections. And communication is so key. But communication is like our air quality. Conversations are like air quality. You don't know that it's not good until you've got an air pollution alert on your phone, right? Or until there's a relational breakdown, and then you're like, oh, this isn't good. Because the quality of your conversation is the quality of your relationship. So we're talking about air quality. We're talking about relationship quality. And to do that, we're talking about conversations. So next slide. So just still review. Can we go to the next slide, please? Wish I had a little clicker. Core values. This is another thing that we went through last week. I think this is tremendously important. These are the things, the attitudes, that if you have these in your heart, you'll automatically be very good at connecting with people, having great conversations. If you can lock these in, and to the degree that you can embody these, everything else I say tonight or we go over tonight will just be gravy to you. Because you're already really good. I met somebody a couple years ago. They were phenomenal at this stuff. And they were not a life coach, not coach trained, didn't know any of this stuff, never even heard of any of this stuff that I'm going over. But they had these values. This woman had these values in her heart. And I was totally stunned. Because really, if you can embody these attitudes, these values in your heart, you'll just win. So first and foremost, it's seeing and believing in others the way the Father does and with the Father's heart. It's pretty simple. Do you see people the way God sees them, even in pressure situations and in conflict? Number two, working with what the Spirit of God is prioritizing in that person's life and helping them engage with God in it. This is so key because frequently we have what we think God is doing in their life. We have what we think, how we think they should be changing. We have our agenda for people's change, but that's not God's agenda. And point in case, I said last week, is how Jesus treats Legion, the man with 500 demons, versus how he treats his 12 disciples. His 12 disciples he calls to follow him over a 3-year journey, and he still says they're not going to get it until the Holy Spirit comes. And Legion, he gets the man delivered of 500 demons in one day. He says, I want to follow you and be your disciple. And Jesus says, go share your testimony with your hometown, and you just start doing it. Yeah. What? Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. This guy needs help. He needs a 12-step program. But that's not what the Lord was prioritizing for that man.
I agree. Yep.
It's different than what we think.
Yep.
So it's figuring out and being sensitive to what's the Holy Spirit up to in that person's life, different than what I think God should be up to or what they should be focused on. Remaining curious. Have faith in another to let them take responsibility for their own life. Discipleship doesn't mean making dependents. Dependents are only good at tax time. This doesn't mean we don't rescue people, we don't help people. We do help people who are in dire need. We do rescue them. We do intervene when necessary and especially when invited to. But in general, the goal is letting people take leadership of their own life and encouraging them to do so. And part of that is having faith that they're going to figure it out and be the expert of their own life and get it right. Then communicating unconditional love in a judgment-free zone. That's when I when I give criticism or feedback or tell somebody they messed up, I try to do it in the most neutral, non-judgmental way, cheering on and championing their growth and believing in their potential, even though I'm sharing something that's a negative. I'm doing it for them and their benefit, not for me or me being right or me being smart. I'm even willing to say, you might not like me or I might look dumb, but I want to see you succeed, and that's why I'm telling you this hard stuff. No judgment about it. And then finally, celebrating each person as uniquely designed. So this is core values. We can move on, but before I dive into the next training, this is about connecting, and I want to invite Pastor Mark up for a little interview, and I want you to hear from his heart before we go on into some of the more weeds of the technical training. Are you awake tonight? Hope you're caffeinated. Okay, so Pastor Mark, come on up. I don't know if we can get a second microphone so that we can have a little dialogue, but if we could, that'd be awesome. Brad's giving me a thumbs up. Come on, Mark, let's have a chat. So we did go over this, but we didn't rehearse it. So this will be a real conversation, and I'll like ad lib and preface it until we get there. So one of the things I noticed about this guy and our friendship and his pastoral ministry and him as a person is Mark can connect with people very quickly from all different walks of life and all different circumstances. Like, it's not unusual for us to, like, you're on the roof doing something with some tradesman, and recently you got stuck in the roof with Clint in the middle of a snowstorm, like, and I had to go get gas for you guys, but you're having a grand old time. And you're connecting, and you're just making the best of it, even though it's like you got to get down because it's cold and there's wind chill. And then it's not that same week or that same day, I can't remember, you're somewhere else. Like, we'll go to the Tringales at a pastor's gathering. There's pastors from all different parts of the city of Syracuse, and you're just chumming it up just the same way with them as you were with Clint, and just the same way as other people who come in here, whether they're into sports, no matter what they're into, you're connecting. And I think that's something that's a true gift of yours, and I think that you do it naturally. And so I just want to ask you, like, what's your process, and what have you learned that's allowed you to connect with so many so quickly across such a diverse group of people?
Yeah. Just wait for them to turn it on. And we're live. Good to go? Okay, yeah, we're good to go. Yeah, no, it's a great question. First of all, I have a love for people that is huge. But I grew up quiet and it was not a military home, but it was, Dad was strong. He spoke, we all listened. So I had to kind of like break out of that, and even coming into this church is what really helped me with Big Papa. And he said I was too quiet, so I had to start talking more. But communication is huge, and the one thing that I learned is listening. And so I realize, when you walk into a conversation, you don't realize what you're walking into. It's not just because you're a pastor or you're a business owner. This should happen to everyone. Your job is to make relationships, tend relationships, have good relationships, see people succeed, and help people along the way. Is there, and it's reciprocated. And that's what's so beautiful about a proper relationship, is that you feel that reciprocation and you feel the support. So the one thing that I've learned to do is, you don't know everyone, and you don't know what they're all about. So you just ask a good question. Where are you from? A lot of times, just simple things, where then as soon as I start to realize where they're from, I can also grab a hold of the culture where they're from and start to ask questions if I know about that place. If not, then it's asking about that place. And as they begin to talk, they begin to pour out their heart, and especially, it's interesting because if they know that I'm a pastor, well then they either clam up or they open up. And so I have to then try to either pry or it's like a floodgate, and you get a lot of conversation just one way. But the one thing I had to be you asked me the question last week about the which one am I when it came to the verbal villains. And it's so easy for me to be a labeler because I want to be a fixer, because I want to help people, and I feel like I love the core values, because it's I want to enable somebody with the Spirit of God to help fix themselves. Like, where it's not themselves, it's them entwining with the Spirit to be able to help themselves. And so I love to find out where people are from, what they do, and encourage them in that direction, and help them along that path.
Yeah.
So
that's super good. I love what you started, your love for people, and I think that you carry that in spades. You just genuinely love people. But I thought what the other distinct thing that you said, which I didn't expect, was you walk into a conversation recognizing that you don't know what's going to happen or who they are.
Mm-hmm.
you said that a couple of times, and I think that's something that's like, I mean, it's uncomfortable for me, is the mystery and the unknown of how's this going to go and who's this person, and
Yeah.
I got to go to the trouble of figuring them out or risking an awkward conversation, but you lean into the not knowing and get curious about it. Can you talk more about your experience there and how do you get curious and get brave to lean into the don't know?
It's really asking questions. There's a lot of times I think that we walk in to a conversation with the wrong lens. So I feel like we need to change our lens. It's instead of being the labeler and I'm going to fix this, it's because now you're talking about the problem instead of the promise. So when I pray, I don't want to pray about the problem, I pray into my promise. So I want to figure out what's going on with them, and I can see the problem's evident. It's always going to be there, until it goes away. But how's it going to go away? Well, it's going to go away by figuring the promise. So, they have you have a flat tire, you need a tire store, I just think that the lens that we look through often needs to be changed.
What would you call the right lens? Like what label does that have? Instead of a labeler or a verbal villain lens?
As a person opens up in conversation, you begin to just learn so much about them. So one of the things that I think that we do well, and we call it like our office talk or conversation, like we open each other up, and there's being able to understand the person and understand what they're asking is huge. Can you just ask that question again, though?
Yeah. So I love what you said about lenses, and it's clear to me what the wrong lenses are, like the verbal villains, or you said the labeler.
Oh, right.
What would you if you had to create your own PowerPoint slide and put the right label on the right lens people should have coming into a conversation? What would you call it?
Right. Well, if you're talking about the promise over the problem, then it's a righteous lens. It's the righteousness of God. You see the person as a son. You see the person, and you're calling out the true identity in the person. So either in the spirit or in the natural. Like there's something in the natural. We have a job. We have something that we're really, really good at. And we want to. We want to excel at that thing, and so that's what I see in people, and I want to help them excel in the thing that they're gifted in, and that really excites me. So when I see them succeeding, it's like then the lens is all about success, and then also it's so clear to see where they came from, and then one thing after developing a relationship with somebody, I love to take them back to the spot where we met. And say, remember we were there and this happened and then all this and there's all this encouragement, as a friend, and it's huge. But that lens has got to be. You got to drop the verbal villains. You got to drop the labeler. It's not my job to fix somebody, because the minute that you take that job on, and the thing I've realized, and one of the things you've actually helped me with. Is as soon as I take the job on as the fixer or the labeler, it actually becomes my problem. Because now I'm trying to fix your problem.
Right.
Why am I trying to fix your problem? I have nothing to do with this problem. But isn't it so easy to find yourself like you fall into somebody's problem because you just love them and you want to help them, and maybe it's financially, maybe it's whatever it is, right. and you walk them through and talk them through and. Just an example, Aim and I were talking I was talking with somebody yesterday, and the conversation was getting a little long. And so she comes up and she interjects, but she just jumped on this train of how's God going to help you? So just yesterday, I was in this conversation, and it was like this repeat, yeah. 10 minutes repeat. And I'm thinking, how am I, what can I do? And it was a horrible situation, and I'm thinking, how can I just...
Real problems.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, she comes out of nowhere with all right, we got to give it to God. And I'm like, right, why wasn't I there? This is weird. But and we find ourselves in different modes, too. Right. Modes of operation. Sure. Like it's like, and it's kind of sad, but it's real. And I think that it tells me that when I even evaluate what happened yesterday, it's like I need to bring God in closer to this talk when I'm there, that I'm able to say that. You know, because I think that from the beginning, if I would have just said that, then the conversation would have went different, and it wouldn't have been the repeat button every 10 minutes. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those conversations.
Oh, yeah. I think this is super helpful because I think for everyone who's been with us here, we've all been in those kind of tailspin conversations, right? This is in a downward spiral. It's going nowhere fast. And but yeah, you can enjoy the person when you're not trying to fix their problems. You can just stay curious about them for them. And I think that's really powerful, really helpful, and then realizing God is people's solution. He's their source, and they can engage God, and He can help them.
Right.
He can use us, but I mean, He's God. He doesn't need to use us. He can.
Right. But as Christians, we should be teaching people how to engage God.
Right.
And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
That when we can give the gift of engagement.
Yeah.
That is like people see such a difference in us.
Right.
That they're asking the questions, how are you there? Or how are you talking about something this way? How are you acting this way? What's the difference?
Right.
And then you start to pour out, you know? So it's so, I think even in a lot of conversations that I have, I have a little bit of self-evaluation on myself of how I could have done something different, how I could have led a conversation differently, how I could have interjected something a little sooner, you know, instead of carrying on a repeat conversation.
Yeah, and what I hear in that too is not a monologue, not a dialogue, but a trialogue. You, the other person, and the Holy Spirit. And you're listening to them and the Spirit, but then encouraging them not just to hear themselves or you, but hear what the Spirit's saying to them in the conversation.
Right.
And this is a threefold cord, it's not easily broken, you know. That.
For sure.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Anything else that you just bubbling up for you as we're chatting?
What was bubbling in my heart tonight was just the lens. It's just the way that we approach something, the way we step into a situation, whether it's with our wives, with our kids, friendships, even if you're not married, like discipleship classes that you have, you know, different things, business that you run. It's all about that lens. It's all when you're talking about Maxwell's slide there, you know, when it goes from, we always miss that second step. It's like we're given a position and we immediately want number 3 because we immediately want what? We want those results.
Right.
And we're after those results. But what that does is if we skip step 2 with the relationships, what happens is now what we're doing is we're putting our results over relationship, which means that you're doing everything yourself. You're not including anybody in, we talked about last week, our dreams.
Right.
We're not including anybody in anything else, and that's when you get all the people that
or it's selfish, right?
Selfishness. Yes.
We have a relationship as long as it's serving us and our vision.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, so it's not about stepping on others to get to the results. It's about including others in relationships to obtain results together.
Right. Yeah.
And you know,
good.
when we do that, it's so much better to celebrate together than alone, isn't it?
Yeah. I watched an interview with Conan O'Brien and Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, and they're talking about Dumb and Dumber and shooting. They were old at this point, and you could just tell how much fun they had, and it wasn't the millions they made from the success of the movie, it was their time together.
Yeah.
And how much genuine fun they had that translated into the ridiculousness of the film.
Right.
But it was the togetherness that was really still their biggest highlight.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to find that on Castaway.
No. No. Yeah. No.
Man was alone. But no, it's about relationships. It's about relationship building. It's about talking with people. You know, getting that lens of seeing people's promises instead of their problems.
Yeah.
That they can use their promise to solve their problems instead of me trying to take on a problem. Now it becomes my problem.
Yeah, treating people as anointed and intelligent as they really are. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good to go.
Seems like a good landing place. What do you think?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Isn't that awesome? Brilliant. Yes, Barry Arnold.
You asked Mark what you would label that lens to be. I would say encourager.
Encourager. Yeah, that's true, and he certainly is that as well. Yeah. For those who are watching, Barry Arnold he commented that I had asked Mark what he would label the right lens, and Barry offered a label of encourager. So I think that's a good comment. So, did you get something? There's so many wonderful nuggets and examples from what Mark said and just how he does it. I've admired that about Mark. And, they say if you've done something for 10,000 hours, you're an expert. That comes from Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. And he makes the point in his little book that people who are an expert who've done something with focus for 10,000 hours, they can spot a fake or a phony in their area of expertise. And he tells this wonderful story a true story about all these sculpture experts that were experts of art history and sculpture. And this museum finally unveiled their new sculpture, which was like a lost masterpiece from a famous artist from hundreds of years ago. And the museum did thousands of dollars of study to validate that this was a genuine and not a fake. And they unveiled it in front of the experts, and the experts said, that's a fake. Right away, that's a fake. And the museum said, we did our homework. It's not a fake. But the skepticism of the experts made them dig deeper, only to find out it was a fake. So people who are experts at something, they can identify what's real, they can identify what's going on, they know the nature of something right away because they've done something for a long time with focus. But you've been you for a long time with focus. You're the expert of you. You're the expert of your own life. And so you have discernment, you have thoughts, you have feelings, plus you have the Holy Spirit on board. And when we show up to a conversation with somebody, we should think, this person's the expert of their own life. The temptation of leadership is the more that you're a leader or respected or know something, the temptation is to think that you know more than the other person about them or what to do with their life. It's just not true, because you've not been them for as long as they've been them. So it's something I have to remind myself of because the temptation's real. And so let's dive in. Let's dive into this. We have lots of ground to cover, more ground than we have time. I'm going to hope to get through the listening section. Maybe we'll peek at the question section, but we might not get to it tonight. So you might just have homework to look at how to do better questions. But the listening will help us. And then next week we're going to talk about how to build a life vision with God. And then the final week we're going to talk about personal giftedness, how to discover and deploy your gifts, and then how to build teams, better teams, by being more gift aware of people's gifts as a leader. Okay, that's the last week. So that's where we're going. But you ready to dive in? Okay, let's dive in. We're going to talk about listening. And can we move on to the next slide there? Spirit-led listening. Oh, yeah. It's just a guy, doctor with a stethoscope. Sorry if this is too much skin for you. The guy, I think it was the guy who invented the stethoscope, said, listen, listen, listen. Your patients are telling you the problem. Right? There's something about even doctors use a rudimentary tool as a stethoscope to listen to what's going on with you. And the principle here is effective listening is an active exchange involving focus, reflecting, and asking. Listening is just stinking hard. To do it really well is very, very, very difficult, and few people are actually very good at it. It's just really difficult. It takes a lot of focus, and it's something that we don't value, but it's something that if you get good at listening, it will immediately level up your communication, your relationships, and even if you're an exhorter, preacher, speaker, it will level that up so much more because you'll understand people so much better, and you'll be able to, the things you say will connect so much faster. So let's go to the next slide. There's three, but these are the benefits to listening. You're avoiding assumptions, you're reducing conflict, you're opening up yourself to new ideas. And you heard that in Mark. That's one of the key themes. Mark is one of the most passionate learners I've ever met. He's learning things in such diverse fields, and he's always curious about learning new things, and especially about people, and that's what works for him. So he's opening himself up to new ideas, new learning. But when you listen, that's what you're doing. You're opening yourself up. We could call it having a revelation, but you could also call it good listening. And then validating others and communicating value. When you listen to somebody, it's a gift to them. Sometimes just sitting there and listening and being engaged with what they're saying, that's it. That's all they wanted. And every husband that comes home from work knows that to be true, or should know that. Just listen. We can go on to the next slide. But here's where the rubber meets the road. There's 3 levels of listening, and I apologize that the top one is a little bit harder to read. Level 1 is what we call self-focused listening. This is you're listening to somebody to figure out what they're saying and what it has to do with you. What the heck does this have to do with me? That's level 1. That's all it's thinking about. Or, more likely, it's what am I going to say next in this conversation based on what this person's saying? Again, self-focus. It's about me and what I'm going to say next. It's not about them.
Right.
That's level 1 listening. Most of us are there. Level 2 is what we consider good listening, although it's only mediocre. That's others-oriented listening. I'm listening for what you're literally saying, and I'm able to repeat it back to you. You said, you hear this arguments all the time. You said blah, 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 blah. And you think I'm not listening, but I'm listening because you said blah, 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 blah. I'm listening to you. Really? So it's listening for what's literally being said, but it's not taking into account what's really going on. And I love the metaphor of an iceberg because there's only a tiny percentage of what the real iceberg is that you can see sticking out of the water. And you could say, well, I'm looking at not the tip, but I'm looking at the water. Okay, but all of the action is where you can't see it. It's under the water. And everyone who's watched the Titanic knows that's true. So the third level is intuitive listening. You're listening on a global level. You're hearing things that aren't even being said. You're listening based on all the time and history you've had with this person. You're listening based on things they said to you last week. You're listening based on their body language and tone of voice. And you're listening based on what you know about them on every level. And you're listening to the Holy Spirit all at the same time. It's what we call it like a soft eyes approach, or we're listening with your peripheral vision to see what's popping up over here as they're talking about this, and I'm just zoned out, kind of absorbing what they're saying. Things are popping up, and I'm wondering, why am I feeling that, or why am I thinking about that? It's not a distraction, it's related to what they're saying. That's intuitive listening. So to get better at intuitive listening, there's 6 tells. You ever played poker? When people are bluffing, they have a tell. Let you know that they're lying and they don't have the full house or the royal flush. They're just bluffing and putting all their chips in to try to get you back up. It's called a tell, right? There's 6 tells that you could focus on and learn how to get good at that are categories of intuition. Because if you can categorize something, then you can analyze it, and if you can analyze it, you can get better at it. It's faster and more laser at it. So here's 6 categories of intuition that you should be listening for when you're really listening to people. 1, and this is from a coach training that I do for people, so it says client, but just think of the person you're talking to. Probably not paying you money. Doesn't matter. If you want to treat them as valuable as if they were paying you money to listen, that's good. So what's their discernment? What do they think about the situation and their own life? This is the thing that we never pay attention to, especially if we're prophetic. Well, I've got the word of the Lord for you. I'm the prophetic one here. Again, they've been with themselves, and if they're a believer, walking with the Lord themselves longer than you've been walking with them in the Lord. They've been dialing the Lord more than you've been dialing with them, hopefully, usually. And they've been thinking their own thoughts longer than you've been sitting there listening to it. So people have a real sense about what's going on with them. I do this all the time at altar calls. If it's not just the wham bam altar call and people coming up for pastoral prayer, I just say, what do you think about this? I just want to hear their discernment. Oftentimes people already have the word of the Lord for their life. They just need somebody who they respect to say, yeah, I agree. That probably is the Lord. Doesn't mean this is always true, but it's something you should really pay attention to because people are the expert of their own life. The second one is a biographical item. This is a thing they're telling you from their past about what happened to them way back when. And sometimes it's like, why are you telling me this? But it's important to them. It means something to them, even if it's not apparent to you what it means. They're bringing up their past thing, the time they lost that child, the time they had that divorce, the time that they finally got the raise, the time they got the breakthrough, the time they're just bringing it up. And it means something to them. Don't lose track of that, even if you don't know what that means. Next one is cycle and outcome. This is good cycles that lead to cool breakthroughs and things and fruit in their life, or bad cycles like addictions and sin issues that keep having the same problem cropping up in their life. And people will tell you that story of it's like a Groundhog's Day in their life that they're telling you about. And you remember, they've just told me about the same kind of story last week. It's not a repeat, it's just the same theme. Important to remember, both for issues going on and for cool things about them and gifts and talents they might not know they have. Cycles and outcome. Advice and affirmation. One of my favorite things to do is ask people, well, who have you talked to about this and what do they say? Because oftentimes people already got 2-3 words of advice from credible people, and you could save yourself a lot of issues if you just say, hey, I agree with so-and-so. That sounds really great. Yeah. Affirmation and advice. And sometimes people just need that. The Bible says out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let truth be established. So maybe they got 1 or 2 pieces of counsel or advice, and you say, I agree with that. And then they got 3, and that's what they needed to move forward. Strong emotion. This is they're telling you something and they're crying or they're really passionate. They're passions and emotions, and they're showing you something with their face and their body and their voice. And it means there's tremendous amount of meaning behind what they're saying, meaning for them. And you want to figure out why is that? Why are they showing you that emotion? Or no emotion. I've had people tell me stuff that they're like, I had someone walk up and they're telling me about prison and they're upcoming, that they're going to go to prison and they want me to pray and all these issues. And the person is completely emotionless as they're telling me this. And as I'm listening to them, I'm like, why is this person completely emotionless about their life going down the drain and they're going to prison? And they're asking me to pray about them and for a miracle. And it just didn't make sense. And I asked the Lord, and I realized, they have no plans of changing. They're hoping for a quick fix so they can keep on doing the life of crime that's going to put them in prison. That's why they're not heartbroken about this, because they're not remorseful about what they did. They're just trying to get a wand waved over them so they can keep on doing it. They're emotionless about these negative consequences. I just noticed, I'm like, why is this person not broken up about this? And I started confronting them about it, and they're like, yeah, I'm not stopping. I'm like, well, I'm not praying, so God bless you. It's, it sounds heartless, but it's real. It's like, red flags. This is someone says stuff about harming themselves, harming others, things that seem crazy to you, things that seem destructive or dangerous to you. Don't let go of that. Pay attention to that. It's not, people don't just say that. They act like they're saying it casually. Oftentimes they're just testing the waters. It's not casual. So if you can hold these things, think about these things, and listen for these things, you can begin to really dive deep with people and listen on that intuitive level to what's really going on. The key here is, again, like Mark said, you're not listening to fix, you're listening to learn. You're listening to dive in and really get curious about them and their life and what's life like in their brain. Knowing that the Lord is powerful enough and involved to help them win, help them move forward, help them get breakthrough. But you don't need to fix it. You're having faith that God's initiating change in their life. I personally believe that I change when God initiates a change in my life. When he times it, he says, now I'm calling you to change in this area. And I don't always figure it out, but it's like if God was with each of us holding us accountable to change in every area of our life that needed change, we'd all have anxiety attacks. You'd die. It'd kill you. So God forbears with each of us and says, no, I know there's a specific teachable moment in each of our lives, in your life and my life, and I'm going to intervene at that perfect teachable moment so that it's the easiest for you to get it and to grow through it through my grace. And as a listener and as a communicator and a connector, I'm reverent about that, and I'm listening to see, does this person identify as God's time of change in this part of their life? If so, I'm going to cooperate. I'm going to go with them in that. If not, and they're completely unaware and they don't want to take responsibility, then I'm probably not going to pressure them. I'm going to wait and see what God's going to do. I'll have a watch and pray mentality and be present and loving. This is the same thing we do with our kids, right? I'm not trying to correct Vera's every behavior, all her stuff. She's 2. I'm waiting. Some things I'm taking care of now, but I'm waiting for teachable moments for other things as it's the right season for her. And God's like that with each of us. So I want to have a little mini coach session. Oh, Linda, you had a question before I go on.
I do. About the last one, the red flag.
Yeah.
I mean, if it is a true red flag,
Yep.
it's like the priest and the rabbi that goes by the guy on the road, and they go, "We'll pray for you. We'll pray for you."
Sure.
Godspeed. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but shouldn't it be a little bit more if it is a true red flag?
Right. Good issue. So Linda was saying that with a red flag, how can you have a watch and pray mentality? Shouldn't you intervene more to that? And I think what you're saying has a lot of merit to it. I would say that, again, we want people to take responsibility for their own life. We want people to rise up and lead their own life well, and we're not their Messiah. Even though we're learning to live like Jesus and intervene and help them in ways that we're invited to, and in the ways that the Lord leads us to. There are strange scenarios, and I'm not saying to never do stuff, because God always has exceptions. But with a red flag, what I found helpful is to say, hey, you just said this. That sounds like a red flag to me. What do you think? Just bring it up. Like, yeah, like this. I have a problem with that. Like, that sounds dangerous. Or did you mean that? Like, tell me more. I would just bring it up again. Like, that's a red flag, brother. Like, what are you, sister? What's going on with that? Yeah. And let them sort that out. Let them see that, and then respond appropriately. There are times you gotta intervene, and but I think we err in the intervene fix mode, as Pastor Mark was saying, versus partnering and coming. It's a difference between I'm going to help you versus I'm going to come shoulder to shoulder with you in the journey of life and walk with you forward. But I can't fix a problem that you don't have. If you give me your problem, you no longer have a problem. It's now my problem. I can't. You've got to fix your own problem.
I think you need to be able to have that hard conversation with somebody.
Have that hard
In
conversation, yeah.
relationships and friendships, it's so important. We always shy away from hard conversations. We don't want a hard conversation.
Right.
But in a true friendship, you will have the hard conversation.
Pastor Mark said in a true friendship, you will have a hard conversation. You shouldn't shy away from it. So this exercise I'm going to show you in listening and being able to bring these up for people and ask them about them. Hey, you have strong emotion. What does this mean to you? Right? Staying curious about these things will be a great way to have more personal and deeper conversations without necessarily needing to lead where it's going. So I want to get a volunteer to come up. We're going to do a 5-minute coach session, and I'm going to listen to you and ask you questions and work with you for 5 minutes on an area of your life that you want to grow in, something you want to achieve, or something you want to change. Grow, do, change. And not something that's super easy, but genuinely, you feel comfortable sharing this with everybody, you'd like to work on it, and you're okay having a coach conversation with me, and we're going to talk about it for 5 minutes so that people can hear these intuition indicators coming out. I'd love to get 3 people so that I can kind of hear what you want to work on, and then pick one that I think we can do in just a short amount of time, or at least broach. So raise your hand if you're willing to be a guinea pig and tell me what it is that you would like to talk about growing in, changing, or working on in this next season of your life. You just raise your hand. Kurt, what's yours?
Oh, exactly what we were talking about tonight, just having better relationships with people as I grow teams and mentor people, and really not just ask questions that are surface, but more are deeper.
So growing connections to be able to grow teams and relationships. Okay? Who else raised their hand? Ken?
That's similar. I just want to be a better engager.
Better engager.
To effectively build a trust with people in a way that you're sincerely wanting to see them and hear better.
Okay. Building trust. And one more person. It can be completely about your life. This is, yeah, Zoe.
Like fear. I'm struggling right now with getting my driver's permit.
Uh-huh.
And just being fearful. To grow in confidence. Need to grow a little in that.
I want to do it. I want to work with, I want to talk with all of you, but I'm picking you. Come on. Okay, so, can we give Zoe applause for being so brave? Yes, you were brave. You said you had fear, but here we are. Okay, have a seat. And so this is going to be a real demo, real coach dialogue, and we're going to work on what you talked about. But I want you guys to listen for these intuition indicators as she's talking. And then I'm going to have you guys report out what ones did you hear, and how did you hear me follow up on them in the conversation. Okay? And you can follow the prompts that are right there. Ready?
Yeah.
So Zoe, you said that, tell me again about what you want to work on and how's that going?
Recently, I'm 16, just turned 16, and mom and dad are like, oh, you've got to get your permit, and I could not be more terrified. And I don't know why I'm so nervous, but I think just lacking confidence in driving and a little fearful about hurting people, or if I could get distracted and run somebody over. I don't know. These are real things. Things I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta think about that. I don't want to go to jail. So yeah, just in that area.
When did you start thinking about the risks of driving?
When I drove with Ava, and I'm not kidding. I was like, so when she started driving, I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, this is gonna be amazing. And then you get in the passenger side and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I trust you that much. I love you, but I don't know. And then I started thinking oh my gosh, Ava's very confident. Sometimes too confident. But then so I am then wow, I'm not confident at all. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she can merge. I don't know if I'd be able to merge. I just kind of go off the road, So that's kind of when I started thinking about that, for sure.
It's interesting your comment with her approach of confidence versus your sense of yourself. What areas right now do you feel confident in?
I feel confident in being a passenger. I think I'm being so.
But expand it. Other parts of your life where
Yeah.
you're doing something that's. No, it's all good. What are some other parts of your life where you have confidence and you're doing something confidently that's not easy to do or not many other people can do?
I feel really confident in songwriting, relationships with most of the time. Things kind of like that, or I think definitely songwriting. I feel like that is my lane. That is where I find the most joy. That's where I connect with God the most in my life.
Mm-hmm. And we know, I know that you've led several songs, and for me personally, I led worship for a little while as a little younger than you, up to 16, and it terrified me, and I stopped. But you're persevering, and you're doing this, and that's something that, everybody drives, few people lead original songs in front of hundreds.
Yeah.
How did you grow in your confidence, or were you just confident right away, or how did that grow for you?
That's a great question. I think realizing that for me, oh, this isn't about anyone else. This is about, God. That is when I really started growing, being even if nobody likes this, I feel so connected to God singing this to Him. That is definitely where I was oh, like this is it. Like I can sing this to God, and he does not care if I sing the wrong key or if I hit the wrong note. Like me just being able to worship him is like his heart's desire. So like that's where I was like, oh, I don't care anymore. Like if he's pleased with me, like I'm pleased, you know?
Yeah,
So that's where I
that's really powerful. So, what connections, are there any connections? What connections are there between that process and driving? How could you engage God to grow your confidence in driving?
that's a good question. Write a song about driving.
Let's talk about more about songwriting. So, like, describe, like you said, you connect with God, but describe more what that's like for you as you're doing it, as you're going for it.
Songwriting?
Yeah.
Like moving forward with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know, just deepening. I guess, yeah, just, I mean, what I said, kind of just getting on that deeper level with God, like each day, and getting closer and closer and closer to just that perfect, like, because when I songwrite, like, sometimes I don't remember. Like, you know, you just kind of go into the studio, and I will just totally not remember what even happened, but it just makes me feel so peaceful and, like, so happy that
Yeah.
God gave me that gift of, like, I can just totally get closed off and totally be in that moment. So, yeah, even just experiencing more of that moving forward.
That sounds like you can really be yourself. And there's almost a freedom. It's not the word that comes to me is like a freedom in that.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about the driving, because this
Yeah.
is the issue.
Yeah.
Get the mindset of how you feel, that freedom of worship, and then look back at this mountain, if you will, of driving.
Yeah.
What do you think as you're looking at it in your mind's eye?
Like how I feel like driving.
Yeah.
When I think of driving, kind of like what I said, like with the just like hurting anyone, or it's definitely just kind of like overcome with fear. I mean, and you know, with songwriting, it's that freedom, and then with driving, it's just like chained down and fearful. Yeah,
Talk
kind of
more
the
about
difference there. And
What do you want to feel driving?
that's a great question. I definitely want to feel like really relaxed and chill. My best example is like Ellie driving. I love when she drives me because she's so chill. She'll have her like leg all up on the chair and she's like driving. She's like, oh, play that song. And she like throws me the phone and she's like driving. I want to be that fun driver who's just like, oh, turn on that song, turn up that music, throws up their legs and like, it's just totally laid back and like makes everyone else feel like so comfortable. Like I want to be the person who's like, oh, I want you to drive me because I know I have just like the best time when you drive me places. That's what I want to be.
Okay.
Right now I'm not really that. I kind of get in and oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Barely.
What steps do you think could get you there?
That's a good question. I mean, I love listening to music while I drive. I mean, being in the passenger side. I haven't driven listening to music, but I feel like it would be a good step to maybe play a mellow song, maybe not rock yet, but you know, like a.
Because music's really powerful for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you even brought up a song that like gets me in the most peaceful mood is Voice of God by Dante Bowe and Stephanie Gretzinger. Like, if I'm about to go on stage and, like, lead worship that morning, that song's playing in my room. Like, all the way up. And that just gets me into, like, such a peaceful spot. So even, like, maybe that's a great idea. Just play. It's an 11-minute long song, so that'll get me somewhere. Vestal Plaza, all the way over there. I think that is a good step, though.
Okay.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that solution?
I feel like it's a pretty good solution, actually.
Okay.
I'm glad we talked this out.
All
Talking
right.
things out really helps me, I've found.
Good. Zoe,
Yay!
Alvin.
Thanks, Dave.
You did great. She's great. Thank you. That was brave of you. It's funny. Yeah. Most people here drive, but wouldn't do what you just did. So, what intuition tells did you guys hear? Raise your hand and share it. Yes, Ken.
Emotion, right away, emotion.
Strong emotion. What did she say? Or what did you see that was
Right, like scared and apprehensive.
scared and apprehensive? Strong emotion. Yep. Someone else. What did you notice? Intuition tell you saw. Yes, Julia.
The biographical item would be like, she feels like her parents are like, it's time, you have to get your license, and she feels like there's the Ava piece, which is like,
Yep.
Ava's so good at this, seems so relaxed, like there's this expectation.
The biographical piece. I'm just repeating for the video, but Julia said the biographical piece was predominantly her parents saying it's time to get your permit and her sister's journey of becoming a driver. Yes, Chris.
The red flag says she wants to drive with her feet up.
Amazing. Apostle Chris said the red flag is she wants to drive with her feet up on the dash. Yeah. Spoken like a true grandfather. That's great. Yeah, it is a red flag. Sorry, Ellie. What else did you hear in terms of, yes, Tony?
It's interesting how she takes something that it could be a very good thing.
Yeah.
She push it to the wrong place. Because big understanding that driving is a serious matter,
Yeah.
for all the people.
Yeah.
Something important that everybody should know.
Right.
So crossing the leg is not.
Yeah.
But I compare that like with somebody wants to love everybody and allow the people that hurt them
Sure.
because they are loving like too much open.
Yeah.
This is the same place in there because she's gonna be a great driver if she keeps having the same conscience of caution.
Right. It's like the caution was almost an overexpression. Yeah.
To that point that she gets nervous.
Yeah. Yeah, good. So Tony was saying that it's interesting that caution in driving is a good thing, but it's pendulum swung to an extreme of some sort. But in the right amount of it is good. Yeah. Another intuition indicator or tell that you saw. Yes, Mike.
Strong emotion of how she loved how Ellie drove.
Yeah, strong emotion of how she loved how Ellie drove. Yeah. Yes, Emily.
Cycle and outcome,
Cycle and outcome.
whenever she's songwriting or she's listening to this song, to a certain song,
Uh-huh.
then she feels X. When she does this, she feels this. And
Yep.
every time it led back to listening to music or writing music.
Yep.
And it's like, it's a cyclical thing of feeling these then.
Very good. Yeah, so Emily said the cycle and outcome of her listening to or playing music and its positive impact on her emotional and mental state. Very good. There's lots, and she was great. She just spilled everything. So this is a great little demo because there's lots to choose from. More? There's more here. Anyone else want to raise their hand? Go ahead, Christy.
So advice and affirmation would be, like, if she was to tell me this and it was a dream,
Yeah,
and I'm interpreting it, I would interpret it the same way, even though it's not. Which
sure.
is, you feel out of control in life, and you are afraid of hurting people. And in this demographic of a car, it's serious injury, not just
Right, yeah, car
small
is serious,
injury.
yeah.
So I would almost go into the root of why do you feel out of control?
Yeah. So that would be you giving sort of affirmation or advice, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? You got another intuition tell? Yes, Linda.
I I just thought, the examples that she gave, like Ellie and her sister, they were really displaying a self-confidence and ability
Yep.
that they had in themselves
Yep.
to drive.
Right.
And she's lacking that confidence, which comes with practice.
Comes with practice. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Good. Did anyone hear her discernment? Anyone here? Zoe's own discernment about her life come into play? Anyone? Yes, Lori.
Well, I think it may fall under there. I was very impressed at the fact that she doesn't take this lightly. This is a serious responsibility. And actually, most young people don't take it that seriously.
Yep.
They're careless, and they just want to get in that car and take off for the freedom's sake. And I'm very impressed that Zoe cares enough to really be sure of herself.
Yep.
And you could see in other areas where she's extremely sure of herself. But in this situation, because kind of like what Christy said and what Tony said, there's a lot more at stake, and so she's very cautious. And any of us that have children know that there are some children that walk at 6 months, some walk at 10 months, whatever, some walk a little later, but they can advance in other areas, and maybe Zoe just needs more time to be 100% certain to even step into this position, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Because the confidence is very important.
Yeah, you raise a good point that she had powerful discernment about the risks of driving. That's true, and she had. To me, that it's a strong emotion and biographical items, but your discernment was the thing that was really on display. So you had discernment about driving and the risks thereof. You had discernment about what writing songs and leading worship meant to you and to the Lord and to your calling. That was powerful discernment that you were just sharing with us. So, yes, Barry.
She didn't want to go to jail.
Yeah, I don't want to go to jail. Powerful, yeah. So, for me, okay, so then how did you, what did I follow up on? What did you hear me following up on? The conversation. Yes, Babette.
One thing you were trying to pull out of her, that driving is a skill and that music is a talent. And so most everyone drives, but not every, so the difference between something that just can be learned by practice and skill rather than her gifting.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Ken.
You drew from her noticing other people being confident to try to draw from her basis of confidence.
Yeah.
And then to how to connect that with how could you connect that?
Yeah.
Go through feeling confident to this process.
Yep. Yeah, so I figured out what do you discern that you are strong in and you're confident. I know you're a confident person. So like as I'm listening to you, I'm also importing everything that I know about you. I'm not just listening to that moment. And so I know you're a confident person. I mean, here we are, right? We're having this conversation. So I'm thinking, how can you leverage some of that in other domains into here? You know how to develop that. Even if you're not sure how you did develop it, you did develop it. So there could be, but I wouldn't know how you would do that. I had no clue, and I wasn't telling you how to do that. I made a little suggestion there when I was trying to see the crossover, but then you didn't make the connection, so I just backed off, right? Like I didn't force it, because it's not about my ahas. The most powerful ahas people have are their own.
Yeah, right.
The most powerful word from the Lord you could have is your own, and it come out of your own mouth. And research says, that's what people are most likely to act on. And you heard her at the end. I like this. I'm going to do it. That was her discernment as well. I know she's going to do it. I don't even have to, and that's what you want. You want, when the other side of the conversation that you're with people that you're connecting with, you want them to take positive steps in action that they're motivated to do, that you don't have to strong arm or harangue them or arm twist them to do. So, I hope that was helpful. Now, we are at 8:08. We're not going to get to the powerful questions segment, but I want to give you a chance to practice yourself, listening for intuition indicators with one another. And so here's a little practice round. And you can, I just want to encourage you to pair up with somebody and ask, what area of life would you like to improve? We all have areas of life that need to level up, and we all are motivated to work on different things. So figure out what that is. And then just ask some curiosity-driven questions and listen for these indicators or these tells to come out and follow up on them. And you can be as overt and obvious as saying, you seem like you have strong emotion about that. Tell me more about why you feel so strongly. Right? Or you could say, hey, this seems like a cycle for you. What do you think about that? So you don't have to be super creative, but just identify the intuition indicator and follow up and get them to keep talking. 5 minutes each person. Or if you have to grab your kids, you got to grab your kids. 5 minutes each person, and just have a quality conversation. After this, we're not gonna debrief. I'm not gonna come back up here, and you guys can go off and have more quality conversations. Maybe next week I'll do a crash segment on powerful questions, but we're just gonna land the plane here for time's sake. Unless people want to go till 9, but we got childcare and all that. So, all right, off you go.
Your goodness is running